Okay, everyone, good morning. I sense we're going to have some technical difficulties today. That's the reason we're slightly late. I'm now noticing that Ryan has barely moved and his thing's quite pixelated. Very confusing stuff. I can't even see the comments today, guys. So let's hope Ryan's connection improves a little bit as we go on. Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing for the final day of March. We're going to be discussing Celtic's big victory over Hearts at the weekend. Plenty to take away from that match. A number of players we can discuss. And 3 wins from the title. A maximum of 3 wins from the title now. Ryan, are you with me?
I can hear you. I can certainly hear you. Can you hear me, Hamish?
Yes, I can. We did test all this, guys. It's the reason we're slightly delayed today. But hopefully we can manage. You can certainly hear Ryan, and maybe his connection will boost slightly as we go on. Okay, before we get started, just a quick word from our sponsors. This Celtic Way video is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh and the surrounding areas, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. Start your search today. Ryan, hello. How was your weekend? How are you feeling? And how does it feel to be the man in charge today of the comments and all that stuff?
Feels pretty good. Good to have that power. Thanks for having me on this morning. Appreciate it. Yeah, last weekend or just that weekend past was really good. Really good performance. First half performance from Celtic, dominant. After a tough, maybe opening 5-10 minutes, Celtic got into the groove and they were ruthless in front of goal. You know, those 3 goals, it probably could have and should have been more by half time. It was 3-0. Then the second half was a procession, essentially. But I wasn't, after all the craziness of 2 weeks prior, I was quite fine with the second half being a procession.
Yeah.
I actually thought they played pretty well and they controlled the game in the second half, which was really showed their maturity as well. But yeah, there's so much we can talk about. You know, the captain, we've got Daizen Maeda as well, Jota scoring, so many positives from Saturday. It was just a good day all in for Celtic.
Yeah, I just thought it was really straightforward. It was
Yep.
just, and to be honest, like that's about as much you could ask for. I think first game back after the international break, they tend to be difficult matches. Hearts, I think John was saying last week, they'd won 8 of their 10 games going into the match, so decent enough team with some good players, but we didn't really give them a sniff. First 5-10 minutes was probably a little bit, or a pretty slow start from us. They looked probably more dangerous, it's fair to say. I don't think they had anything major. I know Sinisalo makes one save that I think's a fairly routine save, although I did hear I think Brendan Rodgers was saying it maybe took a deflection, so that would maybe mark it up a little bit. They had another couple of forays into the box, but after that we were just pretty dominant, and without ever reaching 10 out of 10 or possibly even 9 out of 10, I thought we were a really good watch. And that front 3, when they're all fit and firing, they are just going to be amazing to watch. And we saw glimpses of that, I thought, on Saturday with all 3 goals really involved the front 3.
Yeah, and especially I've got to give a special shout out to Nicholas Kuhn, because he didn't start the game well at all. I think he gave the ball away 3 or 4 times in the opening 10 minutes. And being in the stadium, being in amongst supporters, you could hear the sort of the support not turning on Kuhn, but they were getting a bit annoyed because they were like, you're capable of so much more here, and you're giving away the ball on numerous occasions. But he gave himself a shake. I think the whole team gave themselves a shake after the opening 10 minutes. They were like, right, this isn't happening again. They took their time. They made their chances, and you've got to say, all 3 goals were expertly made. They were all really good goals to watch. I prefer that. I mean, as much as you like those goals from 25, 30 yards, I like those goals just as much where there's good play from defence to attack, and you can see that development and build of a goal, and almost the inevitability of a goal as well, especially for the first one, for Daizen Maeda. People were celebrating before the ball would even hit the back of the net because they knew Maeda was going to score that. Perfect ball from Callum McGregor, who we'll probably mention him, but I thought for 60 minutes he was absolutely tremendous. You know, he did exactly what was asked of him, won the game for Celtic with his play in the middle of the park, and then Celtic took him off with half an hour to go. It was almost as if your job's done. Let's bring on Bernardo for half an hour. that's a great position for Celtic to be in if they've got the squad depth that they can take off their captain, knowing that the game is won, and they can give other players some game time and a welcome return for Paulo Bernardo. But yeah, all in all, just three really good goals, some really good performances on Saturday, and it bodes well for the future. You can see the evolution of this team when they play like that. So yeah, the signs are looking good for the future.
I just thought the goals were made to look incredibly easy. And maybe easy is not the right word, but simple. Like the first goal, and I guess it's evidence of what happens when we do beat the press. There's been a lot of chat recently about can Celtic play through the press, and I dare say Rangers press is generally a bit better than Hearts, for example. Rangers have better players, better fitness, you would think, all of those things. But it did just show to me that when you are able to break the lines and get guys like Callum McGregor into the position we saw for the first goal, and then you've got guys like Kuhn and Maeda and Jota running in behind, it's just real danger for the opposition. And as we say, the first goal is a great goal, but it's just so simple. I mean, it's not a difficult pass for McGregor, and Maeda just finishes it confidently. And a year ago, Maeda's running through, you wouldn't have had the feeling of he's definitely going to score here, because that was the criticism, really, was that we love him and his energy's incredible and he does get goals and he sets up goals, but you couldn't really rely on him to finish a chance like that. But then you look at Saturday, and I agree with you, when he goes through, you know it's in the back of the net, and he slots it to the side of Craig Gordon. Second goal, Kuhn. It was Kuhn's really good play. I love Kuhn coming inside and seeing the options there, and he just dinks it over to Maeda. And again, Jota's falling in at the back post, which is the exact kind of thing you would see under Ange Postecoglou when Jota was playing for us. So that was great to see. And then the third goal as well is, again, so simple. You know the minute Kuhn gets it on the right-hand side, it's a goal, basically, because it's so simple, crosses it, and Maeda's got a tap in. But they only come about as a result of having real quality and pace in the team, and players know what they're doing. So that was great. But no, I thought good performance all round without being breathtaking. I thought some really good displays in there. Naropsky had another pretty good game. I thought Schlupp was good. Hatate, I thought, was quite good. McGregor, as you say, and Sinisalo kept a clean sheet, so can't really argue with that.
No, not at all. I would add Engels into that mix. He wasn't flashy or anything, but he went about his business with a bit of prestige. There was that nutmeg that he played through Kevin Clancy for one of the goals, which was a nice showing. But yeah, I just thought the midfield had a nice balance to it. On Saturday, you had the captain and that holding midfield number 6 position. Then you had Engels and Hatate a little bit further forward, but Hatate, I've said it a lot this season. I think one of the biggest achievements is the fact that Hatate can last longer than 60, 65 minutes in games now, because he's starting to have more of an effect later on in games and really showing and highlighting how good he is on the ball. There was another moment, I don't know if it was in the first half or the second half, where he did one of those trademark turns that we've not seen in a couple of months. Maybe what we would see under Ange Postecoglou with him. But that dynamism that he's got, that he's got that in his locker. It just seems as if he's peaking at the right time this season. That was a really good performance from him. Not anything flashy like with Engels, but I thought he was calculated on the ball. And Tony and I were raving about Paulo Bernardo after he came off the bench. Yeah. I thought for that half an hour, Tony was saying he didn't give away the ball once. Everything that he was doing with the ball was effective. He put out I think he put out a highlight reel yesterday on his Instagram, and you really see how varied some of his passes are. He's good at the short passing, he's good at long passes, he's good at cross balls as well. He's one for the future, but also somebody that can make a difference in the present as well. If Callum McGregor can only give you that 60 minutes, now if that's what Brendan Rodgers sees, then I fully trust the likes of McCowan and Paulo Bernardo to come on and make a difference as well in those last half hour. Maybe it's because Callum McGregor's had that injury, that calf injury, that they're maybe watching his game time. But there's guys on the bench there that can come on and really make a difference for Celtic, and maintain and maybe even up that tempo in some aspects.
Yeah, I think the job was done on Saturday, and with McGregor having missed a couple of games, it made sense to bring him off. Great to see James Forrest back as well. I think he gives us another option as well. Absolutely. Okay, what are the legends saying in the chat then, Ryan? Have a wee browse and let me know what Because I guess we'll
We've
all
got
be pretty happy with Saturday.
Yeah, I kind of took it for granted that you could see the comments. So now I've got the power that's been bestowed upon me. I need to pick some of the good ones. David Holmes, one of our channel members, said it was an all-round very good performance. I would agree with that. I was going to bring up one, but then there was a dodgy name, so I'm glad I stopped myself. Kuhn, Helen Feek says Kuhn chased the ball after giving it away. I liked Kuhn's attitude on Saturday because he didn't have a good start to the game. And he shook himself and was like, right, I'm getting into this. I can see that there's space there to exploit. And he did. And there was people screaming for him to cross that ball earlier for Maeda. But he actually does perfectly because Maeda stops the run for the third goal and is in that right position at the right time. If he continues to make the run, there's a chance that he could be offside. So it's great play all in from the winger and then the striker. It's just a great goal. That third goal is arguably my favourite because it starts from Dabrowski, then Hatate slides it through to Kuhn. Kuhn then passes it to Daizen Maeda. I think it's a perfect, one of those textbook Celtic goals under Brendan Rodgers, and I've watched it quite a few times since it happened on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, I'm delighted with the way that Celtic played on Saturday, and it bodes well for the future, seeing some of these players and how much better they can get, especially with a full pre-season. I make that in the point especially to Jota, who I think is only operating at about 65-70% at the moment. Put a full pre-season in him, and he's going to score goals and make assists for Celtic.
I think it feels to me like you can say that about quite a few of our players, that next season is going to be a real big one for them, which is obviously exciting given that we've had such a good campaign this year. You all know what we've achieved: Champions League, League Cup, League, and a few games you would think, and potentially the Scottish Cup and the treble to go with it. But yeah, I mean, Bernardo's someone as well that I would say next season you're thinking there's going to be an improvement. Naropski, I wouldn't go as far as saying that because I'm still not sure he's going to be around next season, but I think he's been doing fine. I just don't know if he's fancied by the manager. Engels is someone who you think will be improved next year, as you say. Jota, Trusty could be someone who I think in his second season could really come onto a game, kind of like we saw a bit more with, I think Carl Starfelt was better in his second season than the first year. There was a few interesting things said after the game that I just want to touch on, Ryan. And you might have discussed them already. I'm not sure when you did the video after the game if you already had these comments, but there was a bit in Greg Taylor that's been kind of widely circulated. Brendan Rodgers saying it's probably more likely that Taylor will leave than Taylor will stay, which is probably not a huge surprise. But I think when Brendan Rodgers is saying that, you kind of have to think Greg Taylor will certainly be moving on. Just if you read between the lines, and when Brendan Rodgers says something like that, it's usually the case. So you're going to have Greg Taylor moving on. And he was asked about Schlupp as well, and he said that the club will have conversations with Schlupp, who I think says he's very keen to stay at the club. And Brendan Rodgers joked about that and said, of course he has, 32-year-old, amazing life at Celtic, etc. But Taylor out and discussions to be had with Schlupp before the end of the season is the chat.
If next season the left back options for Celtic are Kieran Tierney and Jeffrey Schlupp, then I'll be delighted personally, because I think they're two seasoned pros, both experienced. You know, Kieran Tierney's 27 years old, or just coming up in 27, 28. So he's in the prime of his career. You've got Jeffrey Schlupp, who, despite being 32, doesn't look like he's lost that half yard of pace at all. There was moments in the first half where he was bombing forward. There was a chance that he should have probably scored. That Craig Gordon made a good save on it. Was right at him, to be fair, but if he lifts it ever so slightly, Jeffrey Schlupp should have another goal, his name, to go with that goal that he had at St. But if it's Kieran Tierney and Jeffrey Schlupp, I'll have no complaints about that whatsoever, because it looks as if Schlupp has kept himself really, really fit, kept himself available over the course of his career, and that's going to be important because Kieran Tierney isn't going to play every game for Celtic. Unfortunately, that's the reality. If he was playing every game, I'm not necessarily sure he'd be coming back to Celtic at this stage in his career. You know, maybe he would have been staying down south, but just his injury history sort of precedes him, and it's a shame on his behalf. But he'll get a lot of games for Celtic if he can stay fit and ready. But having that guy in the background that can also play in midfield, that can play in other areas of defence too, somebody that you can get on a free transfer in the summer because his contract's up with Crystal Palace, I think that's a no-brainer. If Schlupp wants to stay and Celtic want him to stay, then they've got to make that happen between the two parties. I think he's been an excellent signing. He's given Celtic exactly what they need on that left side. And on the sort of topic of Greg Taylor, he's not started the last 5 games. He's not made an appearance in the last 5 games. He stayed on the bench. So as much as Brendan Rodgers' comments might have shocked some, I don't think it would shock everybody because, look, he's not been getting game time. Whereas beforehand, he was one of the first names on the team sheet at left back. He said it wasn't financial reason why Greg Taylor was leaving. It was more for game time. That's a guy that knows that Kieran Tierney's coming back. And if Kieran Tierney's fit and firing, then much like in Scotland, he'll get the nod over Greg Taylor. It's just business at the end of the day. Regardless of where he goes, he'll be leaving Celtic a winner. He'll hopefully have another treble to be talking about at the end of this season. But a tremendous servant for Celtic, and you wish him well wherever he goes next, really.
Yeah, and I think Greg Taylor, I think a few people have spoken about it. Potentially, we see him maybe one more time for the club, and it's Trophy Day seems like an obvious one. Final league game of the season at Celtic Park would be a good place for a send-off for Greg Taylor, because it does seem like he's going to leave. Brendan Rodgers did make the point after the game. He said whoever is in next year with Kieran will still play a lot of games, which I think is an important point. I think that the left back stuff, Tierney is probably going to be the starting left back when it comes to the big games, derbies, Champions League games. But if you had someone like Jeff Schlupp playing the other matches, and you're able to rotate that position, kind of like we did at the start of the season with Vai and Taylor, then I think that'd be a good place to be. It doesn't happen as much at right back, which I think is interesting. Like Ralston, I don't know how many appearances he would have made for us this season, but we've not really seen Ralston that often. It seems like Johnson plays the vast majority of games and Ralston will come in occasionally, but I certainly think at left back it's going to be Tierney and then someone else. But just knowing we have Kieran Tierney there, and if we could get Jeff Schlupp again next to him, I think that would be great. So they're going to be working on that. We also had a chat about Sinisalo. What did you make of his performance?
Solid. Yeah, I thought solid on the ball. It was a nervy start for every player because I think they were struggling to deal with Hearts' press to begin with. Maybe they didn't expect Hearts to come out and press the way that they did, but they knew that it wasn't sustainable for the whole game. It was a good snapshot save from Sinisalo. It's a simple one, but it's a good save. He has to make it. If he doesn't make it, then the ball's in the back of the net. So that was good to see from him. Thought his distribution was good. There was a moment in the second half where he manipulates his body when I think he's one-on-one with a striker. I don't know who exactly it was. He was one-on-one. I don't think it was Shankland. And he can go with one of his feet, but he goes with the other one and is able to pass the ball out quite effectively. But he was quite calm in that pressure moment because, if you get that wrong, you might be conceding a goal. You might get a book. You might get a red card if you collide into the player and you stop a goal scoring opportunity. But that showed that despite not having a lot to do in the game, his concentration levels are there. He's clearly learning under Kasper Schmeichel. The good news I'm sure we'll probably hear more about Kasper Schmeichel today because he's having his scan today. But it looks as if he doesn't need an operation, which is good news. But if it is to be Sinisalo for the rest of the season, if that's to be the case, then I've got no issues with that because he looks like a good goalkeeper. And Brendan Rodgers is basically saying Kasper Schmeichel's been so good that nobody else has had a look in. It's not down to his own individual ability that he's not making starting 11s. I think he's one for the future. Brendan Rodgers is still saying that he's one for the future. He's got that potential to be the number one. I like to hear that. I like hearing these buzzwords because I don't want him to be purely just a number 2 in the team. I want him to eventually be the number 1 in a couple of years because that's the way it was sold in the summer. This guy's going to come in, learn off of Kasper Schmeichel, and then potentially become the number 1 in a couple of years' time. I hope that's still the case.
There's some quotes, and again, all of these quotes that came out of the manager's mouth after the game are on celticway.co.uk. I think John wrote them up, so I think it's great to be able to read them all. But anyway, the stuff from Brendan about Sinisalo, and he kind of spoke about the first season, Sinisalo not playing too much, but it's almost as if that was kind of the agreement when Sinisalo signed, that he would come in and certainly for the first year, he would just kind of learn about being at a big club. Obviously, been at Villa previously, but Celtic's a bigger club than Aston Villa and very different in terms of the pressure of winning. And he would just come in and learn from Kasper Schmeichel, maybe not necessarily play too often. And if Schmeichel hadn't picked up his injury, Sinisalo would probably have just had that one appearance this season. Maybe they got one after the league is won. But it seems like that first year was just about coming in and familiarising yourself with the club and the, learning from Kasper Schmeichel. And then next season, his second year, I don't know, I got the impression that maybe things would step up naturally. I think they certainly are already stepping up just due to Schmeichel's injury. But it might be that even if Schmeichel returns and is our number one next season, which obviously will be the case, that we see a bit more of Sinisalo, and then gradually maybe he plays the cup games next year, and then the hope would be that for season 3 of his at the club, potentially Schmeichel's not there, and maybe retires after the World Cup. Don't know that for sure, but that's kind of the feeling. And then Sinisalo potentially comes in and becomes our number one. So I think it's quite good almost that he's getting this opportunity at the end of the season. I don't personally feel like it's massively detrimental to our hopes. Like, I think you saw that on Saturday, that with all due respect to Kasper Schmeichel, Celtic don't need Kasper Schmeichel to beat Hearts at home. I think maybe when it comes to the real big games, like Ibrox is obviously one, even though it's not going to be meaningful in terms of the league position. That's a huge game that we all realise, and that would, if Sinisalo is still in at that stage, that's going to be a huge test for him. And obviously cup final, cup semis, etc. are going to be big ones. But Saturday was a big test for him. Celtic Hearts is a big game, and I thought he did pretty well. A couple of passes out the park, but I'd rather he was getting rid of it and putting it out the park than doing what Kasper did in the last game and giving it to opposition players running in and goal. So I thought that was pretty good. You're right to just comment on Kasper Schmeichel. Brendan Rodgers after the game said he's got a scan on Monday, so that's obviously today. We don't believe it needs an operation, but it's just going to be about how long it takes for it to repair and heal. So it doesn't seem like Kasper is going to need an operation, which on the face of it would clearly be good news. But we're just waiting and seeing, and we might not get a better idea until the end of the week. I don't think Celtic need to rush Kasper Schmeichel back, though.
No, and I think it's good. It's good experience for Sinisalo, and I do agree with you with the couple of passes that he had out the park. I think a lot of them were early on in the game when Celtic were under a little bit of pressure. But he'd much rather it goes out the park than in the back of the net. So you were confident that Celtic could go and win the ball back from those positions, from the throw-ins that they were conceding. There was also a moment in the first half where he, it's such a small sample size, but the throw that he had out from the back, he had a lot of pace on it, very similar.
Is that out to the left-hand side?
Yeah, it had a bit of fizz on it, and from where I was sitting in the crowd, they were like, "Oh, that's pretty good. That's exactly what we want to see," because that was quick. Instead of taking the time and passing it out, he threw it. He showed initiative, and it went out to Jeffrey Schlupp, and Schlupp's on his bike from it very. He'll want that. He'll want the ball early so that he can go run. But yeah, Sinisalo, I think the word that gets talked about quite a lot with Sinisalo, and Rodgers has mentioned it, I think a couple other players have too, is that he's confident. He's a confident young goalkeeper. That's what I want. You don't want a shrinking wallflower, do you? If you're a goalkeeper, you want someone that's going to be expecting to get that position eventually. I want him to be this confident individual that's going to eventually take his idol's place in that number one spot at Celtic. He's clearly there for the future. He's there for the future of Finland as well, because as much as they've got Hradetsky in goals, he won't be there forever. He's the Bayer Leverkusen goalkeeper. I believe we've got another goalkeeper that plays for Venezia in Serie A. But Sinisalo is the young and up-and-coming goalkeeper for Finland. He's going to be the next one to come through. If he times it right, he could be the first choice for both Celtic and Finland within the next couple of years, which, that should give him so much motivation to continually improve, bide his time, and then he'll get so many games for his club and country over the next few years.
Yeah, exciting times for Sinisalo. The other Or is it Vil he's been known as now? I notice a lot of people calling him Vil, so maybe we need to get that into the way of thinking rather than the
Sinisalo. Also, somebody in the comments said a shrinking violet. I've got the two completely mixed up. This is what it's a Monday morning. I try and say something that sounds a little bit smart, and I get the two completely mixed up. I said a shrinking wallflower. I don't even know where that came from. It's Monday.
A shrinking wallflower. I didn't even pick up on you saying that. Anyway,
I should have kept quiet then.
There was also comments from the manager on. I found them pretty interesting on whether he views Daizen Maeda as a striker these days, and this is interesting with regards to the summer window and what happens. I mean, do we need to sign a striker, or do we need to sign a winger? I know some of you might be shouting right now both. But potentially could Maeda be the striker? He's certainly not a bad striker. Brendan Rodgers says, I think he can be. I think it's one where to replace, to move him into the side and take him out of the middle. With all due respect, it's probably easier for us to get a top winger than it is a top striker, which I think is interesting. And I tend to agree that signing a striker for Celtic is difficult. Like we've had a lot of good strikers over the years, but there's been quite a few that haven't quite done it and flopped a bit. And like with Daizen Maeda, we have a brilliant striker. Like I was saying earlier, I don't know if you can give me your thoughts on this, but have we upgraded on Kyogo? Like when Kyogo left, we all wanted Celtic to sign a striker who could do what Kyogo does, but possibly in a more effective way. Because I think a lot of us would feel that maybe Kyogo wasn't quite as effective in the team as he had been under the previous manager. And we might now have the Kyogo replacement without actually signing anyone. He might already have been at the club. I don't think it's in any doubt that we've not missed Kyogo at all. Maeda's played 17 games for Celtic in 2025, and he's got 17 goals. He's averaging a goal a game, and that's not 17 starts, by the way, because he's not started every game. So I mean, I think we're looking at possibly a better striker than Kyogo, which is ridiculous to say because Kyogo was amazing and we all loved him, but the level Maeda's playing at the moment, obviously the big question is can he keep that up for like a longer period? But we are talking a fairly decent period. 30 goals this season, 17 in 2025. Like you have to view Maeda as a striker going forward, surely.
Yeah, it completely is, and I think he's more effective than Kyogo in front of goal. That rashness that we spoke about for so long with Maeda seems to have gone. You look at that goal, the first goal that was scored at the weekend, and to be fair, the second goal, because in the past maybe Maeda would have missed a chance like that. In fact, he has missed chances like that before, but now there's no doubt that he's going to score these goals when he's put through. Two great assists from McGregor and couldn't really put it on a plate for him. But at this moment in time, he's the best option up front. What that says about another striker that's at the club that you spent a lot of money on, I don't know. But right now, Maeda is the best striker by some distance. He just brings so much to the game. He's pressing. That pressing hasn't gone. He's still running off the ball. If anything, it frees him up because he's not playing out on the wing anymore. So he can play in that free role and press anybody. He can do a double team if Kuhn or Jota are pressing somebody, or he can press somebody completely different. But the work rate is still there. But there's an overall improvement in so many factors of his game. It's really impressive to see, and there's no doubt that he's going to be Player of the Year. Now, there's nobody that's even close to him at this moment in time. He's quite fittingly, he's the front runner. There's nobody that's going to catch up with him, I don't think, in terms of individual accolades towards the end of the season. I mean, I thought the Shankland decision last season was quite terrible, considering how good Matt O'Reilly was, particularly in the second half of the season. That won't be happening
well,
this
didn't
year.
It? Definitely aged well, the whole Shankland thing.
He's not the sort of striker that I would want at Celtic. He didn't really put in too much of a shift at the weekend. You look at Maeda and it's just levels. It's just I think it's athleticism as well. The amount of pressing, the amount of runs that Maeda makes. Even if he isn't going to get the ball at the end of it, he'll still make that run and go for it with just off the just with the chance of getting the ball rather than expecting it to come to him. But yeah, I'm really enjoying what he's bringing. I think apart from a sub appearance against Dundee United earlier on, I think it was last month, in every game apart from that Dundee United game, he's either had a goal or an assist in the past month. So he's involved in every single game. And he deserves all the individual accolades that are going to likely come his way at the end of the season. He's going to get his flowers that he deserves because he's been absolutely instrumental to Celtic's success and their continued success at the end of this season.
And yeah, it's one to watch for the summer, I think, with Brendan Rodgers saying potentially, just reading between the lines from what he was saying, that maybe might look and sign a winger that rather than signing a striker, that Maeda might be viewed as a striker. He's certainly viewed as a striker now at this point, but next season and beyond, it will be interesting to see what the club's plan in the summer is on that and a number of other positions. Okay, that'll do us for today, Ryan. It's been an enjoyable one. Celtic are back and we're playing and we're 3 wins away from the title. Now, apologies we didn't get more of your comments and it's been a wee bit difficult technically on today's video, but we've somehow managed. More on the website, celticway.co.uk. Plenty going on there at the moment. I'm just seeing what has been said there. Plenty of chat about the weekend. Comments from Jeff Schloop. Comments from Brendan, as I said. 5 things we learned from the weekend. We story at Neil Lennon not happy apparently from Saturday. Victor Wanyama sent off on his Dunfermline debut at Scott Brown's Area United. So it's all happening, and it's all happening on the Celtic Way website. In terms of us, we will head. You'll need to stop the stream, by the way, Ryan, but we will come back this time tomorrow and do it all again. We'll chat to you then, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.